Today we're going to read The Camping Trip That Changed America. And then, at the end of the episode, I'm going to show you guys some video of Teal and I's recent camping trip and what we got to see, some of the same places that are talked about in this book. All right, let's start. The Camping Trip That Changed America. Teddy and Johnny didn't have much in common, but they shared a love of the outdoors. They both loved a good story too, and that was enough to change America. All right, so this says Theodore Roosevelt, and this says John Muir. Theodore Roosevelt's family had called him Teddy since he was a boy. He grew up in one of the oldest, richest families in New York City. Teddy was short and brawny with a fashionable mustache, and he loved the outdoors, hunting, fishing, and riding horses, and he attended law school before becoming a politician. Theodore Roosevelt became the youngest president of the United States and lived with his wife and 6 children in the White House in Washington, D.C. All right, so he's the president. All right, let's read about John Muir. John Muir's family had called him Johnny since he was a boy. He grew up in the Midwest, the son of a poor immigrant farmer. Johnny was tall, thin, and quiet, with shaggy hair that curled into a long beard. He loved the outdoors, studying, sketching, and writing about plants. He hiked the American wilderness alone and wrote about his travels. John Muir became a world-famous naturalist and protector of wild places with a special love for the Yosemite wilderness near his farmhouse in California. All right, so this guy is a hiker and a scientist about animals, and this guy is the president. How is this going to change America? Let's see. The White House, March 1903. Teddy settled into his favorite chair. He loved to end the day reading. Tonight, he chose a book by John Muir. So the scientist wrote a book, and the president's reading it. Muir's adventures in California's Sierra Mountains sounded just about perfect to the busy president. It was strange then when Muir ended his story by asking for help for trees. He said the wild forests were vanishing. He called on the government to save them. The president thought about those mountain forests for a long time. Most people, even his own experts, thought America had so much wilderness it couldn't ever be used up. Was John Muir right? Could our forests disappear? How could the government help? As president, Teddy needed answers. Roosevelt wrote John Muir a letter. The president was planning a long trip to the western states. He asked John Muir to take him camping in California's Yosemite wilderness at the end of the trip. If America's forests needed help, the president wanted to see those trees for himself. Roosevelt's train stopped in cities and towns along its route towards Yosemite. At each stop, bands played, officials gave speeches, and people crowded the platform to catch a glimpse of the popular president the newspaper nicknamed Teddy. May 15th of 1903, the train reached the end of the line of the small town of Raymond, California, about 30 miles outside of Yosemite Wilderness. When he found men sending his baggage to the best hotel in town, Roosevelt shouted, "By George, I'm going camping. Pack me one small sack." Along with the crowd of officials, townspeople, newspapermen, and the photographers, John Muir waited to meet the president. Teddy took Johnny's hand. "I've enjoyed your stories, Muir." The president spoke a few words to the crowd, and then he joined Muir in a waiting stagecoach. They bumped along the road to Yosemite. Another stop, more speeches. Muir was growing impatient. Didn't the president want to see the wilderness? Then Roosevelt's voice boomed. "Enough pictures, folks. I'd like to see the rest of this country in peace." The president sent his men ahead to set up camp, leaving the shocked crowd behind. Teddy and Johnny rode off alone. Oh, look at this one. It says, "I feel like a runaway schoolboy," Teddy laughed as his horse galloped along. Oh, here's this one. They stopped near a family of giant sequoias in the Mariposa Grove. Surrounded by the tree is this ancient forest. For once, Teddy was quiet. When he looked up, he couldn't see the treetops. The sequoias soared straight to the heavens. These trees grew up when the Egyptians built the pyramids, said Johnny. They are the largest living thing on Earth, and they never stop growing unless they are cut down. We've seen some of those big trees too with our sequoia book last year. That night, under the branches of the towering sequoia called the Grizzly Giant, Teddy lay in the 40 thick wool blankets his men prepared. Johnny made a bed with some branches and wrapped himself in an old cloth from his sack. He told Teddy the funny story about meeting his first bear. All right, let's hear about the story. I once saw a bear in a meadow. Now bears are shy creatures, so I jumped out from behind a tree just to see him run away. The bear looks up. I ran towards him, shouting and waving, and I finally stopped, or I would have run right into him. And the bear rose up, put his claw on a log between us, and glared. I made a big mistake about shy bears. I had to stand perfectly still for hours, or I would have been his dinner. Finally, the bear rambled off, checking back over his hind end to make sure I stayed put. That bear and I were both scared and embarrassed, but I tell you, it was the bear that had the better manners. Teddy laughed, says, "Was it a grizzly bear?" he asked. Johnny shook his head. "The only grizzly left in Yosemite today is this old tree. Hunter shot the last bear a few years ago." Under the trees, Teddy and Johnny slept. You see them sleeping by the campfire? Oh, this is pretty. May 16th, 1903. The next day, Teddy and Johnny rode higher into the mountain, trading stories the way friends do. And as the horses plowed through drifts of snow, they reached a peak called Glacier Point. "Glaciers carved this whole valley," Johnny said, spreading his arms. He lay down on the slab of granite and inched along on his back to show how a massive river of slow-moving ice carved the rock beneath them millions of years before. They camped high above the valley floor. Johnny made the president a bed of branches, and they settled near the fire for warmth. Johnny began his story. "This whole continent is a great garden. Before the beginning of time, ancient seas covered the land, churning the rocks into soil. And the seas dried, and volcanoes sculpted mountains and valleys. Glaciers carved rivers and created plains. Trees and flowers grew into forests and meadows. Wild birds and beasts filled the land, and everywhere nature sang her melody. Can you hear it?" So you can see all those pictures. "My children should see this place," said Teddy. "I hope it's still here for them," said Johnny. And under the trees, Teddy and Johnny slept. Are they sleeping by the campfire again? May 17th, 1903. Overnight, a storm blew in, spreading 5 inches of fresh snow. Teddy and Johnny woke under the coverlet of white flakes. They shook themselves off like 2 old grizzly bears. "Bully," said Teddy, stretching. "What a glorious day." Oh, they look cold. In May. It snowed in May. All right. On horseback, Muir and Roosevelt rode down the famous Yosemite Valley. The granite formations towered above them, and they passed the sheared cliff of Half Dome and the fierce face of El Capitan rising on the valley floor. I'll show you guys the real pictures of what El Capitan and Half Dome look like. Okay, this is El Capitan. Wait, no, this is El Capitan. Wait. I think both of those are El Capitan. We didn't see Half Dome. Maybe this one's Half Dome. It's a picture, so it doesn't look quite the same. I'll show you a real video in a little bit. On their last night together, John Muir talked to the president about life in the wilderness. People were destroying wild land to make money from it. Ranchers cleared forests, prospectors mined gold, and companies planned to build hotels and shops through the valley. There's no one to stop them. "If they keep building, the wilderness won't last another 10 years, said Muir. "How can I help?" asked the president. "Keep it wild," Muir said, "and protect it forever." Together, Teddy and Johnny imagined a different future for America. What if everyone owned the wilderness? What if both rich and poor could spend time out in the open? What if we could save the forests for all of the children to come? These are all different national parks. So we have sequoia trees. That looks like the Grand Canyon. That looks like Yosemite. And that looks like Arches National Park. right, let's see. America's Wilderness, 1903 and beyond. Teddy left Johnny in Yosemite and headed back home. His time in the forest turned the outdoor-loving president into one of nature's fiercest protectors. Roosevelt pushed Congress to pass laws saving the wilderness. He failed at first, but that didn't stop him. He created national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and national forests. Where John Muir's spirit as his guide, Theodore Roosevelt saved more wild land than any president in history. Teddy and Johnny never spent any time together again. Teddy traveled the world, but called the night of the snowstorm the one day of my life that I will always remember with pleasure. Johnny felt the same. He wrote that he fairly fell in love with the president. They exchanged personal letters for the rest of their lives, so they became really good friends. John Muir lies under the incense cedar trees he planted near his home in Martinez, California. Theodore Roosevelt lies beneath the sugar maples in the Roosevelt family plot in Oyster Bay, New York. For all time, under the trees, Teddy and Johnny sleep, and they shared spirits protect our wilderness forever. So when they both died, they both got buried under the trees at their house. But they started the laws that helped create national parks, national forests, and they also helped us figure out that we were destroying the wilderness. Have you ever been camping before? When you go out camping, sometimes you're in a state park or a county park or a national park, and most of those parks are there to help protect the animals and wildlife that live there, because if humans build too many buildings and they chop down too many trees, the animals won't have any place to live and they'll die. Isn't that so sad? Yeah. So that's why Johnny and Teddy had to figure out how to save the wild place of America. So that really was the camping trip that changed America. And Tio and I went to some national parks this summer. And I wanted to show you guys. We went to Yosemite and we saw the same things that Teddy Roosevelt and John Muir saw. And we actually got to see the John Muir Trail, which is the trail that goes from Mexico all the way to Canada through California, Oregon, and Washington. It's called the Pacific Crest Trail too. And we got to see that one, and it was super cool and so beautiful. All right, let me show you some of the videos that we did when we were going through the national parks and all the wildness that Teddy and Johnny worked to stay so that we could see it, because that was over 100 years ago that they made those laws, but that still helped us be able to see the wilderness, because it was gonna be gone if they hadn't done those laws, right? All right, let's go see some videos from the parks. Hi, we're gonna give you a tour of our campsite. Say hi, Tio.
Hello.
Where's our car? And then we have the hammock up. And then this is a bear locker. So you put all your food in there and the bears can't get to your food, because we don't want to feed bears, because that's not safe. And then we have our picnic table. We brought dominoes and card games and little tiny Jenga. Ooh, there's Tio again. And then we have our chairs, a table, and the fire ring. And then we have our tent. He's in there. Cool. Here it is. Hi, Tio.
Hello.
Where are we today?
We're at Grant Grove.
Grant Grove.
Yeah.
There's a sequoia tree. Oh, there's one right here. Look at how big this is.
It's so big.
It's so tall. If you watched the story last summer, what do you have to do?
I have to put my head all the way
All the way back to see it.
It's so big.
Yeah. If the story last summer was about the sequoias, and you got to see some of us here, but we're back in July, so we're gonna see how it's different. See what creatures we can find. You ready for this, friends? Ready? Ooh, there it is. So big. Tio says he feels like an ant with the tall trees, because he's really tall. Hold up. Wait, let me take a picture. Do that again. We didn't hear any bears last night. Did you hear any bears last night? Nope. All safe and sound. Because all of our food and our smelly stuff like lotion and deodorant and soap are all in the bear locker. So the bears didn't think any food was in our tent. Alright, time to get up and get ready. Because we're going to go to Yosemite like the holiday. We made it to the gate of Yosemite. Cheese. Having a picnic in Yosemite Valley. Hopefully we don't have any bears come for lunch. Yosemite Falls. We're going down to the river. We're in the river. Say cheese, Teo. This is Wilson Canyon. Do I know the Wilsons? No. Am I related to them? Possibly.